and has been practicing in the schools for 20 years. And Allison has always worked with students with autism, and I got to know her when she was a preschool therapist, but now she also works with middle school and high school kids. So she's pretty much worked with all age levels, as well as elementary. And she just has a great knack for working with kids who have those kind of problems and have autism and or social skills. So I'm going to let Allison tell you just a little bit more about herself. Here you go, Allison.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. I definitely have a strong favoritism toward children with autism and expertise in that area, and I really enjoy working with kiddos who have social skills challenges as well as being minimally verbal. Before I went to Cherokee County, I worked in the Cobb County School District, and there I served as an autism SLP who supported other SLPs in the district who had students with autism on their caseload. And currently I work for the Cherokee County School System, and I'm kind of doing the same thing where I support other therapists who have students with autism, as well as self-contained and resource teachers. So I do a little bit of consulting with that as well.
Are we ready to switch screens?
I am ready. I have my PowerPoint pulled up.
I don't know how to do it. So.
I think we're ready.
Lydia,
yes.
Are you there?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep, there we go.
Okay, are we all ready?
I think so. I cannot see your screen yet, Allison. Do you?
Okay.
I can't either.
All right, what about now?
No, it's coming up.
Okay, great.
You want to put it on the PowerPoint view?
Sure will. Okay, does it look good?
It does.
Okay, great. All right, well, tonight's topic is pragmatics and social skills with school-age children. As Debbie mentioned before, I have a lot of experience with preschool. Actually, the majority of my career I have spent in the preschool population. So we're going to review tonight some supports for social skills that can be used from the preschool level on up into high school. And actually currently I work with some students who are 21 and 22, and we are still addressing some of those pragmatic skills. But I hope to leave you with some things that you can actually take and use tomorrow and that you can implement. These are things that I try to do on at least a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, and they're really simple things that you can implement. And once you get your little toolbox built up, you will see that you just simply have to add to that toolbox of supports. So our learning objectives for tonight, the first is that we will identify 2 resources on research related to skills interventions. In the school system, I have found that research is my best friend, especially when I am in some difficult IEPs where I might have an advocate there. Anytime that I can reference the research, it has been so helpful, and it really has kind of diffuse that situation. It lets that advocate and the parent know that I do have expertise in that area. And then we want to name 3 methods to address social skills. There are certainly a lot out there. And then list 3 specific strategies that can be used to improve social skills. I love this quote. It's by John Powell, and it says, "Communication works for those who work at it." And we all know that social skills just don't come natural to students with autism, and that they really do have to be taught, and they really have to work at this. It's a lifelong struggle. The research-based strategies that we're going to go over tonight include music, task analysis, video modeling, power and option cards, social stories and scripts, and numbers. So we're going to start out talking about music, and this is another quote that says, "Music is the universal language of mankind." And I have found from preschool on up to high school, all of my students love music and enjoy music and are extremely engaged when I present music in my sessions. And I really just cannot say enough good things about music. we're going to talk about some of the benefits of music. But the one thing I really want to stress about music is that it's not just for preschool. I continue to use music on up into age 22. Now, of course, I can't sing Wheels on the Bus anymore at age 22, but we can certainly come up with some other songs that can be used to engage. And I think as SLPs, we tend to drop using music in our therapy sessions after preschool, but we really need to continue to use it. And there's a whole journal that's devoted to music research, and that is the Journal of Music Therapy, and they are constantly coming up with articles and research related to the benefits of using music with students with disabilities, specifically with autism. It's becoming more and more popular that that is their focus. And some districts throughout our state do have music therapists employed. I know in Cherokee County, in some of our lower functioning self-contained classrooms, we have music therapists. And it's been really interesting to watch them because they really do a lot of the same things that we do as far as trying to increase the engagement and that back and forth exchange with the students. But some of the benefits of music include creating a two-way social exchange. I say something, you say something back. And it provides simple words with repetitive phrases. Most songs have some type of chorus in it, and it can provide sensory input and be calming. If you've ever been to a spa, when you go to the spa, they're always playing the soft music in the background. And there's a reason for that, because it gives you sensory input that helps to soothe and to calm. And it also may satisfy a need for repetition in individuals with autism because music is somewhat predictable. It's got the rhythm to it, and it also has a lot of repetitive lines in it. And I think that makes it a really good winner for students with autism. This is some of the research that's related to using music with students with autism. The first one is that improvisational music was more effective than just play alone in establishing joint attention. And we all know that right now joint attention is definitely one of the buzzwords with our autism population. And basically what this study looked at was it looked at play sessions of preschoolers. And the goal of the play sessions was to increase joint attention. So they did the play session with the same activities, one with music, one without music. And the one with music yielded greater joint attention. And then in 2002, Bronwell did a study and found that when he added music to social stories, it was more effective than if he just read the social story alone. Some more research. Like I said, there is a ton of research, especially in the Journal of Music Therapy, but that it really helped students to recognize feelings more accurately when presented. And if you think about preschool, how often you sing "If You're Happy and You Know It." I know when I was in preschool, I would always change the verses, and I would do "If You're Sad and You Know It," "If You're Mad and You Know It," which was wonderful because it attached meaning because they could see my facial expressions and it had the music with it too, hopefully making some more connections to help them remember those emotions. So how can you make music work for you? One of the ways I do it is I find a familiar tune and adapt the words to a desired skill. I have been able to make "Row, Row, Row Your Boat" go for almost anything. You can also add a tune to a social story or script. In the research that we were just going over, we talked about how adding music to a social story does make it more effective. Especially at the preschool level, you can always find a lot of commercially available songs for greetings, politeness markers, transitions, lots of good things. I know in one of my autism classes that I currently work in, it's a K through 2 setting. It's a self-contained setting, and I always start each session out with a greeting song. It's my favorite one. It's called "Oh Hey, Oh Hi, Hello," and it's available on YouTube to download. But we start that out, and it gives the students multiple opportunities to practice greetings, because how many times do you actually have to take data on that if you're only greeting that one time when you walk into the classroom. So it does give them multiple opportunities, and YouTube has been just a great resource to find a lot of music, especially for the older kiddos, because I find that that's harder to find things on. When I was in preschool, I was just talking about how we used to always do a hello song, and I had one student who used a lot of scripted language, but he did not greet anyone. So we always did that same greeting song. And the greeting song was, when you see someone, you hold out your hand and you look them in the eye and say hi. That was the words of the song. Well, one day we were out within the building and we saw the school nurse, and he stuck out his hand and he said, you look him in the eye and you say hi. And we were really proud because he remembered the words from the song. It was scripted, but he did script it in the right context. So that was an opportunity that I really saw music making an impact on his social skills. Here are some examples of songs that you can use to teach social skills. Again, I love Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Seems like I could make up a song for anything for that. But this is just one that I made up about interrupting appropriately. And for my older students, a lot of times I might make something into more of a rap, and it seems to work well for that population. This is another example. This song I got from perpetualpreschool.com. If you're not familiar with that website, it is a great resource, especially if you work at the preschool level. It has things in themes, and within each theme you can find an art activity, a song, a food activity, and suggested books. So I actually just looked up, I think it was social skills that I looked up, and I was able to find this song. And I love that website. That was one of my favorites when I worked in preschool. This is a support that I currently use with my 16-year-olds. We do a lot of just popular music songs like the Happy Song, the Tootsie Roll, just really popular type dance party songs. And this is a way that I'm able to increase their ability to initiate social interactions. This is a plastic pencil box. Inside the pencil box, I keep pictures of all my students. You might be able to see them in there. And then on the front of this, I have what they're going to say, which is let's dance. And then if I flip the pencil box over, I'll have some choices of students for them to pick. And so they'll take off the picture or the name of the student that they want to initiate with and put it next to let's dance. And then they'll hand the pencil box to that student and say, for example, Jane, let's dance. And I have found that they are so excited to do this. All right, the next research-based strategy we're going to talk about is a task analysis. And I think we're all pretty familiar with what a task analysis is, but it's basically a way to break down a skill into simple steps. And one that we often see in special ed classrooms, especially our self-contained classrooms, is a task analysis for washing your hands. You know, first turn on the sink, next get the soap. But I want us to think about task analysis beyond adapted skills. That's where we most often see it used, but we can use it with social skills as well. This is another great quote that I love. If you wish to converse with me, define your terms. And I think that is what a task analysis does for our students with autism. We may want them to do a specific skill, but we really have to break down that skill into terms that they are able to understand. So again, think beyond adaptive skills. A task analysis is a great way to break down the steps for a social skill. And I often do what I call to-do list that helps structure the steps of a skill. And I'm going to give you some examples of those. But first, let's look at some of the research related to using task analysis for social skills. The first one was done in 2011. And when a task analysis was used, it increased the verbal interactions during cooking activities and for overall social skills. it has been effective for teaching play skills, and I'm going to show you a great example of how you can use a task analysis for a play skill. And it's also effective when combined with video modeling for teaching play sequences. And we'll go over that too. Okay, this is how to break down playing with a toy appropriately. That was a goal that I often saw in preschool written on an IEP, is that the student will play with toys appropriately. Much easier said than done. You've got to break that skill down. So if I gave them a box with a potato head and the potato head parts, I really need to break down what are the steps to play with that. Well, first you put eyes on, next you put the nose on, next you put the hands on, then the shoes, etc. And you could certainly make this any way that you wanted to. You could have it Velcroed and then they put each little piece into a finished envelope. You could have it where they flip it over. All the great ways that you've seen like visual schedules done, you could certainly do with this as well. And this is a task analysis for initiating play. So an IEP goal might read, the student will initiate play with a peer. Okay, so let's break that down to see how would that look like. And when I make this support, typically what I do is use a file folder and I laminate the file folder. On the left-hand side is going to be the to-do side. On the right-hand side will be the finish side. And the student is going to move each little picture to the finish side as she completes it. And if you're like I am and you have your own to-do list, you know how excited you get when you can cross it off. It's kind of the same way for our students. So if I'm breaking down initiating play, first they would pick out a toy from the room. Second, they would ask a friend to play. And for this student, I put the third step as play until the timer goes off. This is one of those times where you just kind of have to adjust it for each student. What happened with this particular child in the beginning, I just had pick out a toy and ask a friend to play. He did that and then he left. So I realized, okay, I've got to add the timer. So you can work it and individualize it for each student's needs. I've also had it where it might say tap your friend on the shoulder or even give them a script line to say. This particular support I use on a daily basis. I cannot tell you how many times I use this, and that is to help initiate greetings. Because how many times do you say, "Hi, Joe," and then he says, "Hi, Joe," right back to you? And this really helps with this, and it also helps with the initiation piece. Again, we're going to use a to-do list. On the left-hand side, these are possible names of students in the class, or you could have photographs if your student is a non-reader. On the right-hand side will be your finish side. You typically have them Velcroed, and what I do with this support is, if, for example, I wanted the child to greet me, the child would move the Miss Allison sign and put it down next to the right of the hi sign. And then they would say, "Hi, Miss Allison," and then move Miss Allison over to the finish side. Then go get John, move it down next to hi, and then put that over at the finish side. And this has been just like a godsend for me because I have gotten a lot of para buy-in from this. So my para pros have been really into helping me with the support. I think it kind of gives them some power too and some buy-in, and they can see that they're there to help the students as well. And I actually have one parapro that takes my data for me, so I ask her if she can do this particular support with the child one time each day. So that gives you 5 trials for your week, and I just put a little sticky note on the back and she takes the data for me. But it sure beats you having to verbally say, "Okay, go say hi to Miss Allison." The next support is very similar, and this is for initiating a conversation, and that is often an IEP goal as well. On the left-hand side is our to-do list. On the right-hand side is our finished. For this particular child, the first thing he had to do in the morning was hang up his book bag. Then he had to pick a question from the envelope, and last he had to ask a question to the friend. And these are some sample envelope questions that you might use. These are questions that are very scripted, but they will carry the child through adulthood because these are often questions that we ask each other. What are you doing this weekend? What did you watch on TV last night? Just basic questions. And this is something that I created for a lunch bunch because I found when I started this lunch bunch that this particular student really needed step-by-step guidance. And he needed a job within Lunch Bunch of what were my expectations for him. And this is just another way that you can do a to-do list. I laminated this one, had my boxes on the side, and he would check them off as we went through. First, he had to ask a friend to lunch bunch. Then once we got into the room, he had to ask the friend to sit next to him. His job was to pass out the hand sanitizer because that does create an opportunity for an interaction with a peer. And then the last thing he had to do was ask the friend a question about his day. All right, a social autopsy. I don't know if you've heard of this, but these are actually pretty common. This is just an example of one that I found on the web. This one was from autismclassroom.com. But basically, a social autopsy is a way to break down a social skill, just like a task analysis does. And a social autopsy is used after a social error. And most social autopsies have 5 basic parts. The first is what happened, what mistake was made, who was hurt, what should I do to correct the mistake, and what should I do next time. And if you just Google social autopsy, you're going to come up with a lot of great samples for using this and a lot of forms that are already pre-made so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. All right, another great quote from Walt Disney, and that's just a reminder to us of how important and powerful pictures are to our students with autism. And I always think of Temple Grandin and how often she says that she thinks in pictures to remind myself to always try to have some type of visual support with me when I'm working with students with autism. We're going to talk some now about video modeling and kind of what it is, and I'm going to give you some examples of things that I've done with video modeling. Basically, what video modeling is it's a model performs a desired task or skill, and then the student watches that task on a video. After the video clip, the student performs the task. And it's a great opportunity for peers to model the desired behavior. What I found is some of our self-contained special ed classes often have, I think they're called like Friends Club, but they're basically typical peers where they're doing a little bit of like reverse inclusion. That is a great thing for them to do. And in middle school, they're all over it because they love being able to use their iPhone and their iPad. And so I'm able to have them model the correct way to do a social skill, and then my student can go back and watch the correct way. Here's some research related to video modeling, and there is a ton of research out there right now because it is a hot topic. It definitely increases perspective taking. It increases the ability to identify emotions and play sequences, such as having a tea party and pretend play. All of those things have seen significant gains after using video modeling. A little more about the research related to video modeling. It does increase social initiations and unscripted verbalizations, and just overall generalization really increases with video modeling. So here are some positive components of video modeling. These are some reasons that we think that it is so effective for our kiddos with autism. The first thing is presented visually. So they have that visual reference, they have the picture. We know how effective that is for our students with autism. It reduces the stress related to face-to-face interaction. They're not having to have an actual social interaction with a live person, it's just a video. It can be repetitive. They can view it multiple times, just like they often watch the same movie over and over. They can watch this over and over. And videos are often seen as a leisure activity because we know that a lot of times if we send home like a motivator checklist to their parents, one of the things that always comes back is a favorite video that they have. So that's another reason. And it narrows the focus. There's fewer stimuli going on. If they're having that social interaction with an actual person, they might have to filter out smells from that person, background noise. If the person is being fidgety, they might have to filter out all of those things. So how can you make video modeling work for you? There are some commercially available programs. One is called Activity Trainer. I know when I worked in Cobb County that was available to us. At the time, there was not a lot on there for social skills. It was more for adaptive skills, but I'm sure as this becomes more and more popular, we will see more commercially available programs. Use your iPhone and your iPad. It's just that simple to use those for video modeling. And when I'm kind of doing some parent training, I like to talk to them about video modeling as well, and they all have an iPhone or iPad, so it's really easy for them to implement. Another thing to think about is pictures of appropriate versus inappropriate social skills, and we're going to see that in a moment. But pictures are static, and that means they stay, whereas the video is transient. It's in motion. So there are some of our students who are going to respond better to those still photographs because it is static. It's kind of the same thing when we're talking about using signs versus pictures when they're just communicating. Some of our students don't do as well with the sign language because it's transient. It doesn't stay, whereas an actual picture is static and it does stay. Role playing, that is a great time to bring in video modeling, is to have our students act out a particular scenario and then they can go back and watch it. We kind of mentioned Friends Club before, and it's great. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about Friends Club and how much they love doing the video modeling. And we're going to talk briefly about something called replays. I think that's on our next slide. Not our next one, but it's coming up. And we were talking about using photographs of appropriate skills versus inappropriate skills. What you want to do with this is have the student compare and contrast a photograph of the appropriate way to do something and the inappropriate way to do something. And the students can keep these pictures in like those little small cheap photo albums that we can get at the dollar store, because when you open it up, you're going to have a left-hand side and a right-hand side. Typically what I would do is on the correct way, I might do a thumbs up symbol down in the left-hand corner, and on the inappropriate way, I might do that universal negative sign. It's a great way for parents to review appropriate versus inappropriate skills before that skill is required in the community. They could certainly keep that little photo album in their car, or they can put it on their iPhone. And we talked about this before, that some of our students may actually respond better to this than an actual video. And here we go. I didn't actually show you a picture, but this is how I break it up, the correct way and then the incorrect way. So what are some good skills that might be very teachable with photographs? One that I have found works well is letting them understand body language. What would be an interested listening position versus someone who is not interested in listening? And again, on my interested side, I'm going to have the photograph with a thumbs up. On the not interested, I'm going to have that negation sign. Personal space, that's another great way. You could have on your thumbs up side someone with like one arm's length in between, and on the negative side, you could have someone that is too close. You could show appropriate versus inappropriate ways to gain someone's attention, how to interrupt appropriately, and just general body language is a great way to be presented through photographs. We're going to talk a little bit about replays, and replays are a technique that can be combined with video modeling. Basically, what a replay is you reenact a problematic social situation that occurs. So this is going to occur after that little social situation has happened and it's not going correctly. Then you're going to role play the appropriate way to handle the situation. You can use puppets or action figures for role play. For some of my middle school girls, American Girl dolls, Barbie works. And really what the replays have shown is that it helps to decrease negative episodic memories. And what that is are memories that you have that are associated with a particular event. So if a child went to Target and something just went terribly wrong, and now they may associate Target with that particular situation. But if we go back and we replay how they could have handled that situation appropriately, then we're hoping that Target will not always have that negative memory for them. Next, we're going to move into social scripts. All right, and we're going to talk about how to write a social story. There is an actual formula for writing a social story. However, if you choose not to do a social story and you kind of wing it on your own, you can call it a social script because social story is trademarked. But here is a website that you can go to, and it will break down all the steps for you and how to write a social story. Basically, with a social story, it's written in first person as a narrative, as the child's perspective of a particular situation, but it also includes other perspectives. So it might start out something like, my name is Allison. I go to Arnold Mill Elementary School. So it's going to give like some background information. It's going to give choices and show a positive outcome. I know a lot of positive outcomes end in, this will make my teacher happy, this will make me happy. So there's always a positive outcome. And a social story can also be written to recap when a student is successful and generalizes the target behavior. And I've been trying to do this more and more, is just capture when our students finally make that moment where they generalize that skill that we've taught them. Then I go back and write a social story about that positive event that happened that day. So I might say, today was Thursday. Allison went outside and played on the playground. She initiated play with her friend by tapping them on the shoulder. Way to go. So I'm basically going through those steps again, but I'm showing her how she was able to use the correct skills for that particular situation. As far as the implementation of social stories, they have been around for quite a while, but most of the existing research shows that social stories should be combined with other interventions and other methods. So really, they're not to be used in isolation alone. So how can you implement social stories? What you really want to think about is the parts of your students' daily routine in which they have that targeted behavior and when it might naturally occur. And social scripts or social stories should be taught before those events occur. Here are some things that I do to make social scripts portable for me in the school setting. Back to those little cheap photo albums from the dollar store. You can put your social stories in there. Again, it's a great way for a parent to organize things, to have them in their car. So if they're getting ready to make a trip to the doctor, they can look in the photo album, pull out pictures of the doctor's visit, and talk about it before they actually get to the doctor's office. And then to the right of that is the key, just the metal key rings. What I'll often do is laminate my social story into just a couple of parts, and they can either do this as a necklace, or they can do it on their book bag or on their belt loop. For my high schoolers, especially those with Asperger's, down on the left-hand bottom corner, you will see what is called I think it's called a quarterback's armband. and you can get those at sporting goods stores. And they kind of just look cool, and they don't stand out so much as maybe having the metal ring. And in that, we can open it up and have that social story available for them. I know one of my friends that works in the middle school setting, she had a student that was having difficulty with being bullied, and so inside that, he was able to keep the steps for what should I do if I am bullied in there. And then, of course, we can always put our social stories on our iPad. And these are some great resources for pulling social stories off the web. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. So many people have already written social stories. The first one is the Watson Institute, which I love. They have a ton of behavior stories already written, not even just about social skills, but even just about hygiene, all kinds of things. The other one is called oneplaceforspecialneeds.com. Again, they have quite a variety of social stories already made. And then, of course, there's Pinterest. They always have great ones on there. All right, the next strategy we're going to talk about is power cards. And I love power cards, and I forget to use them, and I probably underuse them. I need to remind myself how powerful they are. With a power card, the child's hero is going to make the statement that he needs to hear. So to the right, you can see where it says, Spider-Man says, think before you speak. Well, it is much more powerful for Spider-Man to say that than for me to say that to that student, because Spider-Man is either that student's special interest or his hero. So again, I always try and ask parents, especially if they're new to me, does your child have any special interest? Does he have any favorite cartoon characters? That way I can start to use some of those special interests to help us teach the social skills. And with a power card, you're just going to make it into the size of a playing card. You can put it on an index card and keep it on the student's desk. And general ed teachers really like this because once we explain to them what a power card is, it can stay on that student's desk. And if the teacher starts to see that particular social situation come up, she can just go over to the desk and tap that index card to remind the student so that she doesn't have to verbally interrupt and call attention to the situation. And then down at the bottom, that's just another student that I had that was very interested in Thomas, and his was basically, Thomas says, raise your hand. Lots of research about power cards. They have increased the time spent in conversation with the interest of peers and also shown an improvement with sportsmanship skills. Option cards, I try to use those as well. And basically, option cards are what they say they are. They give a student options to handle a difficult situation. Again, they're great to have as an index card to keep on the student's desk. And it can be a reminder, what are some things that I can do when this situation happens? And the example I gave was, when I get mad, I can think about trains. I can take 5 deep breaths. I can count to 3. And teachers, especially in general ed, love this too. And I love it because once they see us doing these things, they start to do it with their whole classroom, which is awesome. This is another option card that we could use if a child has difficulty changing the topic or changes it too frequently. We could keep this on their desk. When I want to change the topic, I can, and here are 3 options that that student could do to change the topic and for that to be a socially appropriate response. All right, moving into numbers. I had really not thought about this until I went to a conference a couple of years ago, and the speaker was talking a lot about numbers, and I thought, you're right. Our students with autism really do like numbers. They talk a lot about numbers. They understand numbers. And it's really because they're so concrete. That's why they learn all those preschool rote skills so well, like shapes and numbers and letters, because they are so concrete. And they often find comfort in numbers because they know what to expect. 9 is always going to come after 8. So how can you use numbers to teach a social skill? We talked about this, that many children with Asperger's are interested in really what I would just call statistics and facts. And one of those facts is numbers. And they tend to understand numbers very well. How many times, well, I don't know if you have worked with Asperger's like in the middle school or high school population, but they can just spit out math facts much quicker than I can. They have a really good understanding of numbers. And numbers are concrete. Social skills are not always concrete. So if we can take a number which is concrete and apply it to an abstract concept such as a social skill, hopefully we will make a social skill more concrete for our students with autism. Here's some examples of using numbers to teach social skills. Often we have our kiddos who have that special interest and they come in and they want to tell you all about elevators, or they want to tell you all about presidents. Right now I'm working with a student who unfortunately is a girl and is fixated with bugs, and she wants to talk about every insect. So I really have to limit her conversation on insects by giving her a number, saying you can tell me 3 things about bugs and then we're going to talk about something else. And I think it helps her because I've honored my interest in her. I've honored that, okay, I'm willing to listen about bugs, but you've got to be willing to listen to what I want to talk about as well. Again, you only need to tell me one time, especially when our kiddos get perseverated on something that they want to say over and over, such as, can I go to the bathroom? I need a break, things like that, that they might perseverate on. If you can just hold up a 1 finger for like just one time, that makes a big difference too. Or if they want to ask you questions. Right now on my caseload, I have a student who knows my schedule better than I do, and he knows what days I'm going to be at which school and is constantly asking me, are you at Arnold Mill today? Are you going to Tippins tomorrow? Highway 575 to Tippins, exit 16, constant. And so I have to remind him, you can ask me 2 questions about my day, and it's just amazing. I just know one day I'm going to find out he's got me on Google somewhere watching. When you meet a new person, this is a great way to teach skills about how to get comfortable and how to know someone. Ask him 2 things about himself. Everybody loves to talk about themselves, so it is a skill that we need to teach our students with autism. And teach the 20-year rule. I mean, my goodness, I could use this for myself. How many times do we get upset about something that in 20 years it's not going to matter, nobody's going to remember it? And that is something that we can start teaching our children, to kind of manage that anxiety. We talked about this one briefly before, but to stand 1 arm's length behind the person in front of you. Again, it gives them a number to attach to that body space. This is called the 5-point scale. This is very popular. I have worked a couple of times in psychoeducational settings and self-contained facilities, and it's often used within those facilities. Again, we're taking something very abstract, such as emotions, and on this one, we're dealing a lot with escalating being angry and de-escalating being angry. So we're attaching a number to their anger. You can find a ton of these online. Again, if you just Google the 5-point scale. But this is great for a student to be able to communicate to you just how angry they are. Are you a 3 or are you a 5? I've also used paint swatches, you know, the little samples like you get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and I kind of attach like anger to a red one, and they can show me what shade of angry they are. Again, it's just making that abstract concept more concrete for them. And there's a lot of 5-point scales out there that don't even have to do with emotions, that have to do with other skills. And once you start using this, I think you're going to see how much you can apply this to other social skills as well. Okay, this next one is an example of volume control. And that is something that is very abstract as well. And this has just been a great way to make that abstract concept more concrete. This one actually was just pulled off of, I think, a kindergarten website. But again, it attaches numbers to it. So I might say to my student, you're giving me a 4, I need a 2. I could also, if I wanted to not verbally interrupt the flow of that conversation, I might have this laminated and I could either walk by and just point to it, or I've even made it where I've had like a clothespin and I moved the clothespin. You could have a clothespin with each student's name written on there. It certainly gives them some visual feedback too as to where their volume is, because I think sometimes it's kind of hard for them to judge their own volume. All right, these are the references, and again, I would encourage you to look into some music therapy. Talk to music therapists. They have a wealth of information that really is untapped for us. Ton of research is out there about using music. So I can't stress that enough about how to look into the American Music Therapy Association, because I did draw a lot of research and a lot of my strategies from that. Another great resource I wanted to talk to you about is, on the second page of my references at the top is socialskillbuilder.com. That is a great website that you can go to and pull not only abstracts of research, but you can also go and pull actual activities off of there. Great place to go. A great place to go if you're needing research related to autism, especially if you find yourself in a situation with maybe a parent who really you have not established that comfort level with, it is researchautism.net, and they have a lot of abstracts related to research and autism. And I've even just pulled down some of those abstracts. If I've had a parent that has kind of questioned why I was using a certain strategy, I can pull out that abstract, and I've often found if I can hand something in writing and have it related to research, that it really gains the respect of that parent. And then on the last page, we talked about perpetualpreschool.com. That's great for anything like manners, greetings, anything play skill related that you might use at the preschool level. And on the last page, there is an actual website